Godzilla is a flexible franchise with a long history. Starting out in 1954 with an original Gojira, Godzilla was initially used to show the horror of nuclear weapons as an allegory for the use of the nuclear bomb during World War II. And as time passed, how we saw nuclear power and energy slowly changed, and Godzilla became a cultural icon of Japan. However, with Godzilla Final Wars in 2004, Toho decided to put Godzilla on a hiatus to rethink the series and what to really do with it going forward. This led the way to the next Godzilla film to be released. Godzilla 2014 was a movie that was received really well. The MonsterVerse is still ongoing to this day with Godzilla and Kong Supernova currently in production and slated for release in 2027. It brought some much needed love to Godzilla, and a new Japanese Godzilla was still in the works. In December of 2014, Toho announced that plans for the next Japanese Godzilla were in the works. That movie would be far different from the later Showa era, returning to its roots of nuclear terror. But this movie would require a nuclear disaster, and both fortunately and very unfortunately for Japan, there was one that did happen. Hello everybody and welcome, my name is Spiderloft. Shin Godzilla is one of the most unique iterations of Godzilla, returning to the original roots of the 1954 movie Gojira. Shin Godzilla is a movie that possesses one of the most horrifying Godzillas, but why was Shin Godzilla so different? Why was Shin Godzilla so unique compared to nearly every other Godzilla? Well, it begins in 2011. My apologies in advance if I mispronounce anything, and feel free to correct me in the comments if I do. On the 11th of March 2011, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake, the strongest earthquake recorded in Japan at the time, occurred in the Pacific Ocean, 72 kilometers east of the Oshika Peninsula, within the Tohoku region of Japan. The earthquake lasted for roughly 6 minutes, and around 1,000 aftershocks were recorded following the earthquake, with about 80 registering over a magnitude of 6, and several of those registering over 7. This earthquake resulted in tsunamis. The heights of the tsunamis varied, though the maximum that I could find was around 40 meters. The tsunami hit Japan's northern Pacific coastline. The tsunamis actually managed to reach all the way across the Pacific, managing to hit North America and South America, from Alaska all the way to Chile. However, the effect on the Americas weren't as major as those on Japan, as thousands were killed and entire towns devastated. And even after the tsunamis, not only did Japan have to deal with the aftershocks of the earthquake, but they would also suffer from another nuclear disaster. In Okuma, Fukushima, the earthquake and tsunami caused damage to power grids and the backup power system to the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Without power, the cooling systems were compromised and resulted in the release of radioactive contaminants. The severity of the Fukushima Daiichi accident was given a rating of 7 by the International Nuclear Event Scale, which is the highest severity. This event has been considered the worst nuclear accident since the infamous Chernobyl in 1986. Of course, I'm not really educated enough to grasp the specifics regarding this event. There are a variety of videos about this event, which could give a better explanation and rundown of this event that I can. However, all that's necessary is to know that 5 years before the theatrical release of Shin Godzilla, another nuclear tragedy had befallen Japan. To really understand why Shin Godzilla is so horrifying as it is, and why Shin Godzilla is as unique as it is, would be to understand the mind behind the movie. Hideaki Anno, one of the most influential men in animation and film within Japan, he is one of the founders of Studio Gainax and had been a key figure in the production of his most celebrated series ever, Neon Genesis Evangelion. Anno is an extremely interesting individual. He is someone who very vividly expresses himself through his works, especially with his work on Evangelion. He often combats bouts of depression, and his work very much reflects his own mental state. Anno was approached by Toho in January 2013, asking him to direct the next Godzilla. However, he initially declined the offer, mostly having done so due to having another bout of depression following his work on Evangelion 3.0, You Cannot Redo, alongside having a lack of confidence on whether or not he could make a film that would come close to or even surpass the original Gojira. However, due to both the sincerity of Toho and from the words of his lifelong friend and fellow Studio Gainax founder, Shinji Higuchi, he accepted the offer in March of that year. In December 2014, plans for a new Godzilla film were announced, with the announcement that Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi, who had both already worked together extensively on Evangelion, would direct the movie together. Anno would write the screenplay and Higuchi would direct the film's special effects. This movie brought along several people who Anno had worked with previously, most notably Higuchi, but also Shiro Sagisu, who would compose the music for the movie. The design for Godzilla would be provided by Mahiro Maeda, with Takuya Takayuki providing a scale model of the design. Higuchi commented that they were going to make the most terrifying Godzilla that Japan's cutting-edge special effects movie making can muster. This was actually the largest Godzilla at the time, standing at an incomprehensible 118 meters and a length of 333. Traditionally, Godzilla is brought to life using suitmation, where an actor dons a suit to act as a monster character. This would change with Shin Godzilla, this Godzilla being the first Japanese Godzilla to be brought to life almost exclusively with CGI. Godzilla would still be played by a person, with Mansai Nomura providing motion capture for Godzilla. Might I add that Nomura's work was astounding. I could get into some of the other parts of production, but this video isn't really supposed to be all about the production. This video is a video on Godzilla. My title reads, "This is the most horrifying Godzilla," so I should probably get to the point where I explain why. Shin Godzilla is a kaiju brought to life, and it's a kaiju that fits really well into its namesake movie. This Godzilla goes through several forms throughout the movie, starting out as this large, almost alien yet somewhat small reptilian creature, and turning into this colossal titan with an extremely dominating presence. A lot of the horror of Shin Godzilla mostly comes from the Lovecraftian nature of this entity. We watch as this creature goes on rampages, and it feels as though this beast is unstoppable. It is a being that is oppressive, dominating the scenes it's present in, and having a president so domineering that the entire movie is revolved around finding any way possible, any semblance of hope towards stopping this creature. Godzilla's an allegory of nuclear horror. Shin Godzilla is an allegory for all three disasters during the 2011 Tohoku earthquake. It is a creature that continuously strikes the audience's hopes down. Again and again, both the audience and characters are forced to feel a crushing sense of hopelessness, and it's horrifying to think that there is no return, that this is the end and that there is nothing we can do to stop it. I mentioned that Shin Godzilla is a Lovecraftian entity. It is a creature that adapts in mere moments. Its body prepared to counter anything we can do. And seeing as this creature evolves further and further, surpassing all known bounds, Shin Godzilla is by all means the perfect life form in its pursuit for constant growth, however unintentional it may be. I think that there's also some horror in the fact that this is a tragic Godzilla. This is a Godzilla which is simply just an animal, corrupted beyond comprehension, incapable of understanding its own circumstances, but in misery as its body rapidly morphs and changes under a completely different will. Now, about 2 weeks ago, I was tutoring some kids, and one of them asked about possession, and it got onto the topic, and some of the kids said that they wanted to be possessed, not really understanding what possession would actually feel like. When they asked me how it would feel like to be possessed, I described it to them in a relatively simple way. Imagine you're self-conscious, but your body moves without your will. The horror of possession is the innate lack of self-control, and that's exactly what is happening to Godzilla. This is a Godzilla who, although can move, is incapable of truly controlling itself and what happens to itself. What I'm really trying to say here is that the horror of Godzilla revolves around self-control and hopelessness. It's a creature which physically embodies both aspects, both literally and figurative. The lives lost from its rampage, the destruction of Tokyo, and the fact that this creature crushes all hope with its mere presence. But it's also a creature who is affected so drastically by human intervention in the natural world. It is a horror that is human-made, and it shows to people just how vulnerable we can be, that at any time, there could be a calamity that could wipe out millions. The ending of Shin Godzilla is meant to inspire some sort of hope, something to show that we can overcome even the most hopeless of circumstances. Shin Godzilla was made with a lot of care. It is a creature who is handcrafted to be horror, to be God incarnate, and the directors and designers created a Godzilla so different, so unique. It is a Godzilla that is the embodiment of so many different aspects of the time. From the 2011 triple disaster in Tohoku to Anno's depression, Shin Godzilla is a movie that uses Godzilla in a way to critique both the Japanese government and portray the grief, trauma, and hopelessness of the disasters through their titular kaiju. This is the most horrifying Godzilla, a Godzilla who possesses a presence so domineering that it crushes all semblance of hope. It is a calamity that embodies all forms of losing self-control, and a Godzilla whose horror is his very own tragedy. This Godzilla is the most horrifying Godzilla. This Godzilla is Hideaki Anno's Shin Godzilla. So watching after that? Well, I only ask for maybe a minute of your time at most. I swear, well, it won't be long. Just a few more final messages. If you enjoy the video, or really any of this content, please consider going down to subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. You can also leave a like, comment if you have anything to say, or feel like correcting me on anything I got wrong, and even sharing it to whoever you think would be interested. I have a Discord server, which you can join down in the description. I post exclusively available polls and announcements there, and you can even interact with me from time to time. And with my time almost up, I would like to do one final thing. Thank you all for watching, and especially for you listening to this message. My name is Spiderloft. Have an amazing day, and I will see you all in the next video. Get up to rock, get up to burst, tell me the